They mocked Sarah when she dropped the plates, calling her sweetheart and little girl, until Cole spotted the purple heart beside her name tag. The room went silent. That medal meant she'd taken a bullet meant for someone else, and the tattoo on her forearm matched his unit's insignia. Before I continue the story, please subscribe. I need to reach 1,000 subscribers so I can keep bringing you stories like this every day. It's just one click for you, but it means a lot to me. Thank you. The ceramic plates hit the floor at exactly 6:47 p.m. on a Thursday that Sarah Mitchell would remember for the rest of her life. 3 plates, white with blue trim, standard Highway 9, Roadhouse china, shattering across the worn linoleum in a sound that cut through the dinner rush like breaking glass always does, sharp and final and embarrassing. Her hands had been trembling when she lifted the tray, the same tremor that showed up every evening around this time. Muscle memory from injuries that never quite healed right, but she thought she had it under control until her left hip seized the way it did when she stayed on her feet too long. The bikers at Table 7 erupted in laughter. 12 men in leather vests marked with Iron Ridge MC patches, their voices loud with beer and brotherhood, and the casual cruelty of men who did not know any better. "Sweetheart," one called out. "Little girl," another added. "Maybe find another job, honey." The words landed like fists. Sarah was 29 years old, 5'4", brown hair pulled back in a ponytail that had started the shift neat and was now falling apart like everything else, wearing the standard uniform of black pants and white shirt and brown apron that smelled like fryer grease and spilled coffee. She knelt to clean the mess, head down, shoulders drawn tight, her name tag crooked on her chest, where something small and metallic caught the fluorescent light and glinted. She kept her eyes on the broken pieces, hands moving automatically to gather the shards, and tried to make herself invisible the way she had learned to do in the 6 months since she started working here. The laughter continued, rolling over her in waves, and somewhere in the back of her mind she registered that this was not the worst thing that had happened to her, not even close, but it landed in that particular spot where humiliation lives and festers. Cole Brennan was mid-laugh when the sunlight coming through the western window hit the metal pinned beside her name tag, and his breath stopped in his throat like someone had punched him. The purple heart was unmistakable even from 15 feet away. That distinctive profile, the purple ribbon, the gold border, and for a moment his brain refused to process what he was seeing because purple hearts belonged in shadow boxes and ceremony and memory, not on waitresses in roadside diners. His hand froze, holding his beer bottle halfway to his mouth, and his eyes tracked down to the woman's left forearm as she reached for another broken plate. Her sleeve rolled up past her elbow, and there it was. The tattoo. 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines insignia, the exact same design that lived on his own right shoulder under his shirt, the eagle and globe and anchor, and the unit designation that meant something more than ink and skin. His battalion, his unit. The beer bottle hit the table harder than he intended. "Everyone shut up," he said. And his voice carried the tone that made men obey without question. The same command voice that had gotten him through 6 years as a Marine staff sergeant before the war broke something inside him that would not heal. The 12 bikers went silent, confusion rippling through them as they looked from their president to the waitress, trying to understand what had shifted in the room. Sarah looked up then, meeting Cole's eyes for the first time, and recognition flashed across her face. Immediate and terrible. Not recognition of him specifically, but recognition of what he was seeing, what he knew, what this moment meant. Her expression cycled through recognition to fear to resignation in the space of 2 heartbeats. And she stood quickly, too quickly, her left leg buckling slightly before she caught herself. She turned toward the kitchen without a word, leaving the broken plates scattered on the floor. "Wait," Cole said. "Please." The word came out rougher than he intended, scraped raw by 6 years of trying to find her and failing. His mind was racing now, sorting through memories that he kept locked in boxes labeled "Do Not Open," pulling them out one by one and holding them up to the fluorescent light. Helmand Province, Afghanistan, 2019. The convoy, 3 Humvees rolling through territory they had driven 100 times before. The July heat that made everything shimmer and distort. The IED buried in the road. The explosion that lifted his vehicle and flipped it. The fire that followed. Someone pulling him from the burning wreckage, hands grabbing his vest, dragging him clear. The medic who stayed with him, whose face he never saw clearly through the smoke and chaos and blood, who took shrapnel that was meant for him when the second device detonated during the extraction. He remembered waking up 3 days later in the field hospital. Ribs wrapped, burns bandaged, alive when he should not have been. The medic had been evacuated stateside. Critically wounded, they told him. He remembered the name on the report, Corporal Sarah Mitchell. He remembered the Purple Heart awarded in absentia. He remembered spending 6 months after his discharge trying to find her, writing letters to hospitals, calling Marine Corps contacts, hitting walls at every turn. Hospital records sealed. Family would not respond. No forwarding information. He had assumed she died from complications. He had carried that weight for 5 years. And now she was here, alive, wearing a waitress uniform and carrying plates, and trying to disappear into the kitchen of a roadhouse 6 miles from nowhere. Sarah retreated behind the swinging door marked employees only. And Eddie, the manager, intercepted her near the dishwashing station, his weathered face creasing with concern, because Eddie was 58 and Vietnam had taught him to recognize soldiers in distress. She waved him off, but he saw the panic in her eyes, the way her hands were shaking worse now than when she dropped the plates. Cole approached the counter, his club brothers watching him with expressions ranging from confusion to concern, and asked Eddie if he could speak with Sarah. Eddie's response was immediate and protective. "She don't want trouble," Eddie said. "You boys need to clear out." Cole removed his leather jacket without a word, turned so Eddie could see his right shoulder through the thin T-shirt, the outline of the tattoo visible through the fabric. "I know her," Cole said quietly. "I owe her. I just need 5 minutes." Eddie studied him for a long moment, eyes moving from the tattoo to Cole's face to the purple heart pin still visible on Sarah's apron, where she had hung it on a hook by the kitchen door, and something in his expression shifted. He nodded slowly and disappeared through the swinging door. The other bikers were whispering now. Vince, the vice president, moved closer. "What's going on, brother?" Cole turned to face them, his jaw tight, and said the only thing that mattered. "That waitress saved my life in Afghanistan." The words landed heavy. The mockery from 5 minutes ago transformed instantly into shame, visible on every face. Men who understood debts and honor, and what it meant to owe someone your life. Sarah emerged from the kitchen, still wearing her apron, walking with that barely visible limp that Cole now understood was permanent. Was earned. Was the price she paid for his survival. She sat down in the booth opposite him, hands folded on the table, knuckles white, and said nothing. "You got the wrong person," Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. Cole described the convoy, the date, the location, the IED, each detail precise and specific. He described the smoke, the fire, the hands that pulled him clear. The second explosion, the medic who stayed when everyone else scattered. He described waking up 3 days later and learning that someone had taken shrapnel that should have killed him. Her face told him everything he needed to know before she spoke. Yes, she confirmed finally, the word barely audible. She had been the medic. The shrapnel hit her left leg, hip, and lower back. 4 surgeries over 18 months. Medical discharge with full disability that covered almost nothing she actually needed. She could not stand for more than 2 hours without the pain becoming unbearable, which made most jobs impossible, which was why she was here working for minimum wage plus tips that barely covered her motel room 6 miles down highway. Her PTSD treatment was not covered by the VA. Her parents had disowned her for enlisting against their wishes and would not help her now even if she asked. Which she would not. She was working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night when the nightmares allowed sleep at all, and her pain management doctor had cut her off because he suspected addiction even though she had never taken more than prescribed. Physical therapy was too expensive. Everything was too expensive. She was drowning and had been drowning for 5 years, and no one was coming to save her because people like her did not get saved. Cole listened with his jaw clenched and his hands gripping the edge of the table hard enough that his knuckles went white. The other bikers had gathered near the booth now, close enough to overhear, their faces reflecting the same anger and shame and determination that Cole felt burning in his chest. "I'm fine," Sarah said, and the lie was so obvious it hurt to hear. "I don't need help. Just let me work." Cole leaned forward, his voice low and steady. "You took a bullet meant for me. That means something." Sarah's laugh was bitter and sharp. "Medals don't pay rent," she said. "Honor doesn't buy groceries. I just need to finish my shift." She started to stand, but Cole reached out, not touching her but close enough that she stopped. He glanced at his club brothers, saw the same thing on every face that he felt in his bones. Shame for the mockery, anger at the injustice, determination to make this right. Something was shifting in the room's atmosphere, something fundamental and irreversible, the moment when strangers became family and debts became purpose. And a woman who saved lives 6 years ago in a desert half a world away was finally going to be saved in return. The parking lot of Highway 9 Roadhouse at 7:34 p.m. was lit by a single overhead light that buzzed and flickered, casting shadows across 12 motorcycles parked in formation and 12 men standing in a circle that felt more like a war council than a conversation. Cole Brennan stood at the center. Sarah, visible through the diner window behind him, finishing her shift, moving between tables with that limp that now made perfect sense, and broke something in his chest every time he saw it. The Iron Ridge MC officers formed the inner ring. Vince, the vice president, arms crossed over his barrel chest. Marcus, road captain and construction foreman, jaw tight with the same anger they all felt. Rick, former EMT with tattooed forearms and steady hands. Tommy, the mechanic whose shop kept their bikes running. Jake, Hank, Danny, Rex, and 3 others whose faces reflected the same shame and determination. "This woman saved my life," Cole said, his voice carrying the weight of 5 years searching. "She's drowning." Vince spoke first, the question simple and direct. "What do you need, brother?" "Everything," Cole answered. "Money, connections, time. We fix this." The discussion unfolded rapidly, each man contributing what he had, the Brotherhood mobilizing with the efficiency of a military operation, because half of them were veterans, and all of them understood what it meant to leave no one behind. Rick knew a pain management doctor in Riverside, good guy, took cases insurance would not cover. Marcus had a cousin who ran a physical therapy clinic, owed him a favor from a construction job done under budget and ahead of schedule. Tommy had 3 vehicles sitting at his shop, fully functional, waiting for buyers who never came, and Sarah needed wheels more than he needed the cash. Hank raised the concern they all felt, his voice quiet but firm. "She won't take charity," he said. Saw it in her eyes. Too much pride. Cole nodded because he had seen the same thing. That rigid refusal to accept help that came from being failed too many times by too many people. "We do it right," he said. "Offer her work, not handouts. Give her dignity back." The plan formed piece by piece. Job at the motorcycle shop doing bookkeeping because Sarah was clearly intelligent and organized. The kind of person who survived 3 jobs and kept herself together despite everything falling apart. Medical care arranged through Rick's contacts, presented as employee benefits, not charity. Housing through the apartment above Tommy's shop that had been sitting empty for 8 months since the last tenant moved out. Everything legitimate. Everything earned. Everything designed to give Sarah a foundation instead of a Band-Aid. Vince issued the warning that made Cole's stomach tighten. "She's got pride," Vince said. "Marine pride. This goes wrong. She disappears. We'll never find her again." Cole's response was immediate and absolute. "Then we don't let it go wrong." The shift change happened at 8:15 p.m., and Cole waited by the time clock where Sarah punched out, her shoulders sagging with exhaustion that went deeper than one evening shift. He laid out the proposal carefully, keeping his voice level and calm, explaining the job at the mechanic shop, the medical connections through Rick, the housing option that came with employment. Sarah's reaction was immediate and explosive. Anger, not gratitude, her voice rising in the quiet diner. "I don't need your pity," she said. "I don't need rescuing." Cole kept his hands visible, his posture non-threatening, his voice steady. "It's not pity. It's a debt." Sarah's laugh was sharp and bitter. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "I did my job." The argument escalated, other patrons turning to watch. Eddie hovering near the kitchen with concern etched across his weathered face. Sarah's voice carried across the diner, raw and unfiltered. "You know what your brotherhood is," she said, and the words came out like broken glass. "It's just another unit, another family, and families leave. They judge, they disappoint." Cole understood then that the wound was not just physical, not just medical, but something deeper and more fundamental. Her family had abandoned her for choosing service over their expectations. The military had discharged her when she could no longer serve. The VA system had failed her at every turn. Trust had been shattered so completely that the idea of accepting help felt more dangerous than drowning alone. She stormed out, leaving Cole standing in the empty diner, the bell over the door still ringing. Eddie approached with the careful steps of a man who had learned to read combat veterans, and he gave Cole the information without being asked. "She lives at Sunrise Motel, room 14, Eddie said. "Girl works herself to death. Comes in hurt, leaves worse." Cole's jaw set with the determination that had gotten him through 6 years of combat. "I'll find another way," he said. The next 3 days unfolded in surveillance that felt necessary and invasive in equal measure. Marcus followed Sarah to her second job at the warehouse, on the industrial edge of town, watched her clock in at 11 p.m. for the overnight shift that required lifting boxes and moving freight despite injuries that should have kept her on permanent light duty. Rick tracked her to the free clinic, where she waited 2 hours for a doctor who gave her ibuprofen and sympathy, but nothing that actually addressed the chronic pain, and he noted that she walked 2 miles each way because her car sat broken in the motel parking lot with a shattered transmission. Tommy confirmed the car situation, ran the VIN, discovered it had been inoperable for 3 weeks, which meant Sarah had been walking or taking buses to 3 different jobs across a city that was not designed for pedestrians. Vince checked the motel, spoke quietly with the manager, who was threatening eviction over noise complaints from room 14, nightmares that woke the neighbors, trauma responses that Sarah could not control, even in sleep. Each biker reported back to Cole, the picture growing darker with every detail, and Cole's frustration mounted alongside his determination. How do you help someone who will not accept help? Vince provided the answer during a late-night meeting at Tommy's shop. "Show her, don't tell her," Vince said. "Prove we're different. Don't ask permission. Just be there." The plan shifted from direct intervention to subtle presence, a shadow operation designed to keep Sarah safe while demonstrating reliability without demanding trust. Friday night at 11:47 p.m., Sarah finished her warehouse shift and started the long walk to the bus stop 3 blocks away, through a district where streetlights were suggestions and safety was negotiable. 3 men emerged from the shadows between buildings, and Sarah's pace quickened but not quickly enough. One of them called her name, recognition in his voice, and Sarah stopped because running would only make it worse. Daniel Cortez, former Army corporal, dishonorably discharged for conduct unbecoming, had served in the same deployment but a different unit, and he had blamed Sarah's battalion for the failed mission that led to his discharge for 2 years before the real reasons caught up with him. He was drunk now, aggressive, his words slurring, but his intent clear. "Purple Heart don't make you special," Cortez said, moving closer. Sarah backed away, reaching for her phone, but the other 2 men spread out to surround her, threats escalating from verbal to physical. Headlights cut through the darkness, sudden and bright, the rumble of motorcycle engines loud in the quiet industrial zone. Cole's bike arrived first, followed by Marcus and Vince. 3 men against 3 men, the odds even but the outcome predetermined. They had been watching the warehouse, making sure Sarah got home safe. The shadow operation in full effect. Cole stepped between Sarah and Cortez, his body language radiating controlled violence. "Walk away," he said. Now, Cortez recognized military bearing when he saw it, recognized the tactical positioning, recognized that he was outmatched despite the numbers. He threw the first punch anyway, drunk pride overriding survival instinct. The fight was brief and efficient. Cole and his brothers moving with practiced coordination, strikes controlled and precise. Enough to end the threat, but not enough to cause permanent damage. Cortez and his companions retreated, threats trailing behind them. And Sarah stood frozen in the aftermath, adrenaline crashing through her system like a tidal wave. The roadside at midnight was dark and quiet, except for the idle rumble of 3 motorcycles and the sound of Sarah's breathing coming too fast and too shallow. Cole caught her as her legs gave out, the panic attack hitting full force, PTSD triggered by violence and helplessness, and the accumulated weight of 5 years fighting alone. Marcus called Rick while Cole kept Sarah grounded, his voice steady and calm, talking her through the breathing exercises that every combat veteran learned and most needed at some point. They transported her to Rick's house, Sarah fighting through the trauma response, but losing the battle against exhaustion and fear. Rick's wife, Emma, met them at the door, nurse training and maternal instinct combining into efficient compassion. They got Sarah inside, checked her vitals, wrapped her in blankets, and Emma began examining the injuries with growing horror at what she found. Old wounds healed incorrectly, scar tissue built up wrong, chronic pain that came from lack of proper treatment, and medical neglect that bordered on criminal. Rick's face went hard with fury at the system that had failed her so completely. Sarah's barriers crumbled under exhaustion and fear, and the simple fact of being cared for by people who knew what they were doing. "I can't do this alone anymore," she whispered. The admission dragged from somewhere deep and painful. "I tried. I'm failing." Cole held her hand, his grip gentle but steady. "You don't have to be alone," he said. And the promise was not just from him, but from the brothers standing in Rick's kitchen, making phone calls and pulling strings, and activating a network built on loyalty and shared experience. Sarah cried then, years of held pain releasing in waves, and Emma held her while the men did what men do when action is the only language they speak fluently. The decision was made without asking Sarah because she was too exhausted to fight, and someone needed to make decisions when she could not. They were intervening, starting immediately. And this time there would be no refusal, because sometimes help is not offered but given, not requested but required. Sarah fell asleep on Rick's couch, her breathing finally evening out. The first real rest she had gotten in months evident in the way her body went slack and still. In the kitchen, the bikers made their calls, contacted the doctor in Riverside, arranged the physical therapy consultation, coordinated the job and housing details, built the foundation that Sarah would wake up to whether she wanted it or not, because wanting and needing were different things, and these men understood the difference. Cole stood in the doorway watching Sarah sleep, his mind cycling through the 5 years he spent searching, and the 5 minutes it took to find her, and the 5 days it would take to start fixing what should never have been broken. The debt was old, but the payment was immediate. An Iron Ridge MC moved with the certainty of men who had found their mission and would see it through to the end, no matter what obstacles rose up to block the path. Sarah woke at 8:23 a.m. on Saturday to the smell of coffee and bacon, and something she had not experienced in 5 years, which was the feeling of being safe. Rick's house was small and cluttered in the way homes get when children live there. Toys scattered across the living room floor, and photographs covering every wall, and Emma appeared in the doorway holding a mug that steamed in the morning light. "You're awake," Emma said, her smile warm and genuine, and lacking the pity that Sarah had learned to recognize and hate. "The club spent last night making some calls. We've got a doctor appointment scheduled for you Monday morning in Riverside. Pain management specialist, good man. Takes cases the insurance companies won't touch. Physical therapist consultation Wednesday afternoon. And there's a job if you want it. Bookkeeper at Tommy's motorcycle shop. Flexible hours. Desk work. Benefits included. Housing 2, small apartment above the shop, available immediately, comes with employment. Sarah felt tears starting again, but they were different this time. Not the tears of breaking, but the tears of something being rebuilt. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, and Emma sat down on the edge of the couch with the ease of a woman who had comforted many soldiers in many states of distress. "Because when Cole came home," Emma said quietly, "he was broken too. PTSD, nightmares, drinking himself unconscious most nights. The club helped him, made him get treatment, refused to let him drown. That's what family does." Jessica arrived an hour later, Vince's wife, tall and blonde and wearing the kind of confidence that came from years of being married to dangerous men and learning to hold her own. Angela came with her, Marcus's wife, bringing homemade breakfast casserole and coffee cake, and the news that Marcus's kids were asking about the new lady who knew about Marines. The women's perspective shifted something in Sarah's understanding. The recognition that brotherhood extended to everyone under its protection. That this was not a rescue operation but an adoption. Sarah's resistance was softening, but the guard remained. 5 years of betrayal not erased by one night of kindness. Cole arrived at 9 with takeout breakfast from the diner downtown, saw Sarah sitting at Rick's kitchen table surrounded by club wives, and the expression on his face made something crack in her chest. She smiled at him, small and tentative but real. The first genuine smile she had given anyone in longer than she could remember. The next 2 weeks unfolded in a structured progression that felt more like military deployment than civilian life. Each day mapped with objectives and executed with precision. Sarah moved into the apartment above Tommy's shop on Sunday. Club members arriving with donated furniture and paint supplies, and the kind of organized chaos that came from men who knew how to build things. Vince and Marcus painted the walls a warm cream color, while Tommy installed new locks and Jake fixed the ancient radiator that clanked and hissed. Sarah started work Monday morning after the doctor appointment that changed everything, the pain management specialist spending 2 hours evaluating her case and prescribing a protocol that actually addressed the nerve damage and chronic inflammation instead of just masking symptoms. She discovered she was good at bookkeeping, quick with numbers, able to see patterns in the shop's finances that Tommy had missed. The customers warmed to her gradually, regulars learning her story in pieces, veterans recognizing the look in her eyes and offering respect instead of pity. The physical therapy sessions were brutal and effective. The therapist working through scar tissue and muscle adhesions with hands that knew exactly where to press and how hard to push. Sarah's physical condition improved slowly but measurably. The limp becoming less pronounced, the pain reducing from constant screaming to manageable ache, her body remembering what it felt like to move without breaking. Trust built between Sarah and the club members in small increments. Individual connections forming like threads in fabric being woven. Tommy taught her basic motorcycle maintenance. Patient and thorough, showing her how to change oil and adjust carburetors and read the language of engines. Jessica invited her to the wives' weekly dinner, Thursday nights at the clubhouse, where Sarah discovered that these women were not accessories but architects, running businesses and managing households and holding together the infrastructure that kept the brotherhood functional. Marcus's kids asked her to help with homework because she was patient and smart and did not talk down to them, and Sarah found herself sitting at their kitchen table 3 afternoons a week, explaining algebra and history, and feeling useful in ways that combat medicine never provided. Vince and Cole started including her in business decisions, asking her opinion on expansion plans and vendor contracts and financial strategy, treating her input as valuable rather than decorative. The first club barbecue happened on a Saturday afternoon, 3 weeks after she arrived, and Sarah attended nervous but present, wearing jeans and a t-shirt instead of her waitress uniform, her hair down instead of pulled back, looking more like herself than she had in years. The moment of belonging came unexpectedly during a conversation about terrible action movies. Everyone laughing. And Sarah realized she was laughing too, that the sound was coming from her throat without effort or pretense. That this was what community felt like. The evening stretched long and comfortable, the sun setting over the motorcycle shop's back lot where grills smoked and children played and adults drank beer and told stories. Sarah found herself sitting next to Cole on the back steps, the crowd noise, a comfortable background, and she asked him about his recovery. The months after deployment, when everything fell apart, Cole opened up in a way he had not before, describing the PTSD that made sleep impossible, the nightmares that woke him screaming, the substance abuse issues that first year. When he tried to drown the memories in whiskey and prescription pills, "The club intervened," he said, "forced me into treatment, gave me no choice. I was you, refusing help, drowning alone. They didn't give me a choice." Sarah understood then that the help was not pity but paying forward, that Cole saw himself in her struggling and would not let her drown the way he almost had. The conversation went deeper, circling around survivor's guilt. And Sarah revealed what she had not told anyone. 2 Marines died in that convoy, she said, her voice barely audible over the barbecue noise. "I saved you, but I couldn't save them. Their names were Rodriguez and Chen. I carry their names, their faces." Cole was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of knowledge she did not have. "You saved 3 families that day," he said. "Mine and 2 others I pulled from the second vehicle before it exploded. Your actions gave me time to get them out." Sarah felt the world tilt. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I passed out after." Cole continued, laying out the mathematics of heroism, the ripple effects. "You saved 5 lives total that day, 3 soldiers, and later, those soldiers saved others. Rodriguez pulled a kid from a burning house 2 years ago in Denver. Chen works with homeless veterans, gets them housing and treatment. I run this club, help guys like me stay clean and functional. Your sacrifice mattered, matters, you matter." Sarah cried again, but it was cathartic this time, years of guilt releasing like pressure from a wound. And Cole sat beside her, steady and solid, while she processed the revelation. The turning point was quiet and internal. Sarah accepting for the first time that she deserved help, deserved life, deserved the second chance she had been refusing. 3 weeks after Sarah joined the shop. On a Tuesday afternoon when Cole was out on a supply run and the shop was quiet, Daniel Cortez returned. He was sober this time, but angrier. That cold, focused rage that was more dangerous than drunk aggression. He brought 2 others, plus a lawyer, expensive suit and briefcase, legal threat wrapped in professional courtesy. Cortez laid out his demands with clinical precision. Assault charges from the previous confrontation, unless Sarah recanted her version, testified that the club attacked unprovoked, that she had been coerced into false statements. The real motive was transparent: revenge against men who had humiliated him, using Sarah as leverage to destroy the club legally. "You're just their charity case," Cortez said, his voice dripping contempt. "They'll drop you when this gets expensive." Sarah stood firm, her military training overriding fear. "Get out," she said. "Now." Cortez escalated, moving closer, blocking the door, invading her space with deliberate intimidation. "You don't belong here," he said. "You're broken. They'll figure that out." Sarah's combat training kicked in automatically. Defensive posture, weight balanced, phone recording, everything. Tommy and Marcus arrived because they had been checking on her regularly, the situation intensifying as 6 men faced off in the small shop office. Police were called, but the damage was done, the threat delivered, and Cortez left with parting words that hung in the air like smoke. "This isn't over." The club meeting that evening was tense and urgent. Emergency session called to address the legal threat and Cortez's escalating harassment. Cole was furious, wanting direct action, the kind that solved problems permanently. But Vince was the voice of reason, cutting through emotion. "We do this legal," Vince said firmly. "Right way." The club lawyer was already involved, building a case, researching precedent. The discussion revealed that Cortez had history: dishonorable discharge for violence, pattern of harassment, debts and grudges, stretching back years. The real question was not legal strategy, but personal cost. Would Sarah stand with them publicly, testify in court, face questions about her PTSD and disability, and medical history. Potential media attention because veteran stories sold papers and generated clicks. Risk that her family would find out, would contact her, would drag her back into conflicts she had escaped by cutting all ties. Sarah was given the choice explicitly, the club willing to fight with or without her testimony. But everyone in the room knew that her statement would end it definitively, that her credibility as the decorated veteran would destroy Cortez's case. Sarah's internal struggle played out in the silence, visible on her face. The instinct to retreat warring with something newer and stronger. She looked around the table at men who had helped her, who had given her life back, who were willing to fight for her without demanding payment. "I'm tired of running," she said finally, her voice steady. "I'm done being a victim. Let's end this." The club's response was immediate and unified, support and pride visible on every face, and Cole spoke for all of them. "Whatever you need," he said, "however long it takes." Sarah felt something new settling into her bones, belonging and purpose and strength, the recognition that she was not alone anymore, and that fighting alongside family was different than fighting alone. The planning began immediately, building the legal case, documenting harassment, preparing for Cortez to escalate before the court date, because cornered animals were always most dangerous. But Sarah was no longer the wounded veteran drowning in a roadside diner, and the men around her were no longer strangers offering charity, and together they would face whatever came next with the certainty that comes from shared purpose and absolute commitment. The fundraiser for veterans happened on Friday night at Highway 9 Roadhouse, the same place where Sarah had dropped those plates 6 weeks earlier, and the symmetry was not lost on anyone who understood how far she had come in such a short time. 80 people filled the parking lot and dining room, local press included, television crew from Channel 7 and a reporter from the county newspaper taking photos and conducting interviews. Sarah had helped organize the event. Her first major public role with the club, coordinating vendors and scheduling speakers, and managing logistics with the efficiency that came from military training and natural competence. She stood at the microphone at 7:30 p.m., wearing jeans and a black shirt with the Iron Ridge MC logo, her purple heart pinned beside it, visible and proud instead of hidden and shameful. She spoke about veteran support needs, her own story shared in measured words, the struggle with medical care and employment, and the invisible wounds that society preferred to ignore. The crowd listened with a kind of attention that comes from genuine respect, and Sarah felt something she had not experienced since before the convoy explosion, which was the sense that her voice mattered and her experience had value. The media coverage was positive, the news crew filming her speech, the reporter asking thoughtful questions about the gaps in veteran services and how community organizations could fill them. Mid-event, at approximately 8:15 p.m., Daniel Cortez arrived drunk and confrontational, pushing through the crowd with the aggressive swagger of a man who had nothing left to lose. The public scene unfolded rapidly, Cortez's voice carrying across the parking lot as he made accusations designed to destroy Sarah's credibility. "She's lying about the medal," he shouted, "lying about her service, lying about her injuries. Stolen valor," he called it, the worst accusation one veteran could make against another. Sarah remained calm, her military bearing holding steady even as her hands shook. And Cole and the brothers formed a protective barrier between her and Cortez, a wall of leather and muscle and barely controlled violence. The police arrived within minutes, removing Cortez before the situation escalated to physical confrontation. But the spectacle had been captured on video by multiple phones and the news crew, the disruption playing out in full view of reporters and attendees and the court of public opinion. The event was disrupted, Sarah's moment of triumph transformed into humiliation, and she retreated to the back room of the Roadhouse, shaking with anger and shame that felt too familiar. Cole found her sitting on a stack of beer cases, head in her hands, and he sat down beside her without speaking for a long moment. "He's desperate," Cole said finally. "That means we're winning." Sarah's response came out raw and exhausted. "He took my dignity," she said. Again, "When does it stop?" The next 72 hours unfolded in rapid progression, the club lawyer working around the clock to build their defense, and discovering something far more significant than assault charges and harassment complaints. Cortez was involved in a fraudulent veteran charity, stealing donations meant for wounded warriors, operating a scheme that had siphoned tens of thousands of dollars over the past 3 years. He was worried that Sarah's visibility would expose his fraud, that her legitimate Purple Heart and authentic service record would draw attention that would unravel his entire operation. The paper trail was extensive once investigators knew where to look, connecting Cortez to missing funds and fabricated expenses and donations that never reached their intended recipients. The club shared the evidence with authorities, and a federal investigation opened within 48 hours, the kind that involved IRS agents and FBI interviews, and the slow, grinding machinery of justice that could not be stopped once activated. But Cortez was becoming more dangerous as the walls closed in, threats escalating from verbal to written to physical. The burned note left on Sarah's car on Sunday morning was explicit and terrifying. Back off or disappear for real this time. The club implemented security protocols immediately, never leaving Sarah alone, rotating shifts to ensure constant presence. Cole personally took the night watch outside her apartment, his motorcycle parked in the lot below, sleeping in shifts with his phone in hand and eyes on her door. Sarah was frustrated at the restrictions but understood the necessity. The recognition that Cortez was cornered and desperate and capable of violence that went beyond drunken confrontation. The tension built steadily toward confrontation, everyone feeling it, the sense that something was coming that could not be avoided only survived. Monday evening at 7:15 p.m. Sarah was working late on the shop's books, quarterly taxes due and receipts scattered across her desk. Cole in his office reviewing vendor contracts. The break-in came sudden and violent. The back door kicked open, 3 men entering with Cortez in the lead, carrying a crowbar, his face twisted with rage and desperation. The intent was clear. Destroy evidence, intimidate Sarah into silence, make her disappear the way he had threatened. Sarah hit the silent alarm with her left hand while grabbing the fire extinguisher mounted on the wall with her right. Combat training, overriding fear, muscle memory from a different war, activating automatically. Cole responded from his office, unarmed against a weapon, but moving without hesitation to place himself between Sarah and the threat. The violent struggle was brief and brutal, Cortez swinging the crowbar at Sarah's head, Cole intercepting the blow with his forearm, the sound of bone cracking audible even over the shouting. The reversal of the original convoy rescue was complete and deliberate. He saved her the way she had saved him, took the injury meant for her, the way she had taken shrapnel meant for him 5 years earlier in Afghan dust and smoke. Sarah used her combat training, the hand-to-hand techniques drilled into every Marine, disarming one attacker with a move that sent him to his knees gasping. Tommy and Marcus arrived within 2 minutes. Had been nearby checking inventory at the parts warehouse, the fight ending as reinforcements turned the odds impossibly against Cortez. Police arrived, arrests made, Cortez and his companions in handcuffs, and Cole was sitting on the floor of the shop office, holding his ribs and bleeding from a gash above his eye. The EMTs wanted to transport him to the hospital, but Cole refused until Sarah physically ordered him to comply, her voice carrying the authority of a combat medic who would not accept argument. She rode with him in the ambulance, refusing to leave his side. The role reversal complete in ways that mattered more than physical position. 2 weeks later, the court proceedings began. Cortez facing assault charges and fraud charges and harassment charges that stacked up like cordwood, ready to burn. Sarah testified on a Wednesday morning, strong and clear and credible. Her military record submitted as evidence, her Purple Heart authenticated by Marine Corps documentation, her service record examined and verified by multiple sources. Character witnesses included Cole and club members and Eddie from the Roadhouse, who described her work ethic and determination. And the prosecuting attorney built a case that was airtight and devastating. Media coverage was extensive and positive. Sarah's story inspiring others to come forward about veteran struggles and community support. And the verdict came on Friday afternoon. Cortez was convicted on all counts, sentenced to 6 years federal prison with additional charges pending for the charity fraud that would add years to his sentence. Sarah's vindication was complete, her public record cleared, her credibility established beyond question. But the aftermath brought complications Sarah had not anticipated, attention and exposure that opened doors she had deliberately closed. Her family reached out, her mother calling 3 days after the verdict, voice tentative and uncertain, saying she had seen the news coverage and was proud and wanted to reconnect. Her father sent a letter, formal and awkward, asking if they could meet and talk and rebuild what had been broken. Sarah was conflicted, anger at their abandonment warring with a longing for reconciliation that lived deep in places she tried not to examine. The club supported whatever she chose, no judgment either way. And Jessica sat with her one evening, explaining that forgiveness was not forgetting, that boundaries were healthy, that family could be chosen as well as given. Sarah made the decision to meet her parents on her own terms, at a neutral location, with clear boundaries established before the first conversation. The meeting happened at a coffee shop, awkward and painful and necessary. Her parents apologizing for abandoning her, Sarah demanding accountability for years of rejection, everyone crying and no one pretending the wounds were healed, but acknowledging they could maybe start healing. 6 months later, Sarah's transformation was complete in ways that showed in her posture and her voice, and the way she moved through the world. She was physically healthier. The pain management and physical therapy restoring mobility and strength, emotionally stable in ways that therapy and community and purpose had built piece by piece. She had been promoted to business manager for the club's enterprises, overseeing the motorcycle shop and the construction contracts and the new ventures that kept Iron Ridge MC financially solvent and legally legitimate. Her expanded role included helping other veterans through the club's new charity foundation, Sarah's idea backed by club resources, creating the support system she had needed and could now provide to others. The partnership with the local VA provided job placement and medical referrals and housing assistance, filling gaps that government bureaucracy left wide open. Sarah rode her own motorcycle now, a restored Harley that Tommy had rebuilt with her helping, teaching her mechanics and riding technique until she could handle the bike with confidence and skill. The club had offered her full member status, rare for someone who had not been part of the biker culture, old lady designation that meant family in the deepest sense. Her relationship with Cole had developed slowly, from debt to friendship, to something deeper that neither of them rushed, because they both understood that foundations needed to be solid before you built anything permanent. The romantic tension was acknowledged, but moving respectfully, hand-holding and quiet conversations, and the kind of partnership that came from shared experience and mutual respect. Sarah spoke at veteran events regularly now, an advocate for wounded warriors, her story giving hope to others who were drowning the way she had been. Her family reconciliation was ongoing, tentative but healing, her parents attending her speaking engagement at the County Veterans Memorial and meeting Cole and the club members who had saved their daughter when they could not. The club had expanded. 3 new veteran members recruited through Sarah's outreach, men and women who needed brotherhood and found it in leather vests and motorcycle engines, and the bond that came from shared service and shared struggle. The final scene happened on a Sunday morning in late spring, the annual memorial ride for fallen soldiers. 30 bikes gathered in the parking lot of Tommy's shop at dawn. Sarah led the ride, carrying photos of Rodriguez and Chen, the 2 Marines who died in the convoy. Their faces young and smiling, and frozen in time before the IED took everything. Cole rode beside her, their matching unit tattoos visible on arms exposed to morning sun. The 2nd Battalion's 7th Marines insignia connecting them across years and miles, and all the distance between death and life. The full brotherhood rode behind them, formation tight and disciplined, engines rumbling in synchronized thunder as they headed toward the Veterans Memorial 30 miles north. They stopped at the memorial wall, granite carved with names, and Sarah placed flowers at the base. Said Rodriguez and Chen out loud, so their names filled the air instead of sitting silent in stone. The survivor's guilt had transformed into survivor's purpose. The recognition that living well honored the dead more than dying with them ever could. Cole's hand found hers, his grip warm and steady. "You saved more than you know," he said quietly. Sarah's response came from a place of hard-won wisdom and acceptance. "We all did," she said. "That's what family does." The closing image was cinematic and perfect. The club riding into the sunset, formation tight, Sarah at the center instead of the margins, belonging instead of drowning, whole instead of broken. The internal reflection played like a voiceover, from broken and alone to whole and belonging, from drowning in a roadside diner to leading a brotherhood, from refusing help to providing it. The medal didn't save me, Sarah thought as the wind whipped past and the road stretched ahead and Cole rode steady beside her. They did, and now I get to do the same for others. The story that started with dropped plates and mockery and shame ended with purpose and family, and the kind of redemption that came not from erasing the past, but from building something better in the present. And the Iron Ridge MC rode on with one more member, who understood that saving lives was not a debt to be repaid, but a gift to be passed forward forever.